is the current number of documents bearing classified markings that have been found in the president's residences and offices?
I would refer you to the White House counsel's office.
Okay. And Ian just declined to comment on that as well.
There you go. You got your answer.
There you go. Stonewalling. That was White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre refusing to say how many classified documents were actually found in President Biden's possession. Yesterday, the FBI conducted a search of President Biden's Delaware beach home. His lawyers say that they agreed to the nearly 4-hour search and no additional classified documents were found. Agents, however, did take some materials and handwritten notes, possibly related to Biden's time as vice president. Joining us right now is Real Clear Investigations deputy editor and the Federalist senior contributor, Benjamin Weingarten. Ben, great to see you. Thanks very much for being here. What's your reaction to all of this?
Where to begin?
Yeah.
You obviously have the double standard up front of, well, former President Trump, who, of course, had authority to declassify documents, potentially had nuclear secrets, might have been selling them to the Saudis, et cetera, et cetera. We don't know, first of all, what documents we're talking about when it comes to Joe Biden. What documents were when he was a vice president, where he did not have declass authority. Same thing, obviously, when he was a senator as well. At what locations? Senators themselves on the Senate Intelligence Committee cannot gain access to what might have been contained in those documents. And then we have, of course, the broader issue here of the FBI and DOJ once again interfering in a presidential election. So on the merits, Joe Biden should be investigated to the fullest extent, but so too should the FBI and DOJ. And I think them having dueling special counsels here takes this out of the realm of the House Judiciary Subcommittee on the weaponization of the federal government. So all around, it's a mess.
Yeah, all absolutely right. And, you know, it's pretty outrageous that the committees that are supposed to be overseeing the DOJ and the FBI are being told to go pound sand. I mean, you know, the DNI the other day said, absolutely no, we're not going to tell you what is in these documents. These are the people who are actually voting to pay that agency is alive, the DOJ and the FBI.
All too often, these oversight committees have been captured and co-opted entities, I believe, of the very agencies they're supposed to oversee. But in this case, you see unbelievably brazen responses from the committees. You have obviously the president who can say, I'm sorry, I have to refer that to a committee or a council who's never going to interact with these committees. And again, we have a weaponization subcommittee to look into the double standard kind of treatment of these special counsels, and they will not respond here and comply.
Liz, this is really dangerous. And look at the Post this morning. It's mine, Hunter Biden, it's mine, finally admitting that the laptop is, in fact, Hunter Biden's with all of the evidence of influence peddling. We've been connecting the dots here to the Hunter Biden influence peddling, all of the tens of millions of dollars this family has taken in from adversaries like China to the classified document scandal.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an incredible mess. And by the way, two things have happened that make it a much bigger headache for the White House. One, that Elon Musk now owns Twitter. And so all this stuff is now public. It can't be suppressed. The mainstream media can ignore it. But at least on Twitter, we're seeing all these revelations. Number two, you have the GOP and the majority in the House. And as you know, I'm always worried that they're going to bungle these hearings and investigations and not much. But I really do think the American people are learning so much now about the corruption here. And the whole brand of Biden is his honesty and his straightforwardness. And boy, has that been torched. Absolutely. And I think it really has. I mean, you can see it in the polling. And thank heavens, because he was never honest, in my view, and never straightforward.
Well, for 40 years.
Yeah, I mean, really.
Been, you know, watching influence peddling.
Yeah.
Mike.
Yeah.
I mean, give me a break, you know? I mean, this is a serious story. And now we're supposed to believe that the commander-in-chief is making the right decisions when it comes to China after having been compromised, having taken all that money.
Yeah, and I think the GOP needs to understand that, and they need to ensure that their messaging isn't laser focused on Hunter, because I don't really think the American public cares. I think they care about the influence peddling. I think that's where the messaging should be. Look, as someone who dealt with classified material for a very long time, right, I look at it more in terms of the unfairness or the two-tiered level of justice as not so much between how they're treating the former president and President Biden as how they would treat the average civilian, the individual, you or I, right? If we did this, that's it. We'd be in jail, right? And so I think the American public understands the issue of fairness, and this is what's going to cause them real angst, is the idea that these people are being treated differently.
Yeah, and meanwhile, how long have they been, quote, investigating this guy?
Yeah.
6 years, and still he's walking around and no problems that we can actually see?
It's the two-tier justice system, and it's really a no-standard justice system at this point, I think, is something that if Republicans don't address, we don't really have the rule of law in this country. We don't have a Republican system. And I totally agree with Mike. It's not a Hunter Biden story. It's Hunter Biden as a proxy for Biden family influence peddling. And the question should always be, Mr. President, to what extent do your family's dealings impact our policy with respect to Russia, with respect to China, with respect to every other adversary that his family was doing business with?
And we have an answer to that when we consider the fact that the University of Pennsylvania was able to lobby the White House to shut down the China initiative.
How do you,
Hundreds of billions of dollars in intellectual property theft from our companies here. Okay, Mark? And they shut down the China initiative.
Yeah. Absolutely insane. But, you know, one of my biggest issues with this whole, you know, Biden classified document thing is time and time again, you look at the Penn Biden Center, his attorneys went there and cleaned up.
Yeah.
You look at his Wilmington residence. I think President Biden went there a week or two before. Who knows what he did a week or two before. And then with his beach home, he was there a week or two before. So, you know, I'm sitting here kind of scratching my head wondering, what was he doing there a week or two before? Why were his attorneys there? Is there a cover-up? What's going on?
You don't think it was tanning? Not just tanning. I think one of the most damning things are these emails from Hunter Biden demanding money for information and having him sort of lay out the kind of information he can dish on Russia, which looks exactly like a briefing memo. It certainly isn't something that a crackhead could come up with, you know, in his bedroom,
And
right?
Ron Johnson said that it looks like he took it right from classified information when the State Department, you know, tells the senators about the backdrop of the situation before they travel there. And by the way, also damning, I think, is that email about Alcoa. They wanted actually to get money from Alcoa in exchange for secrets about Oleg Deripaska, the Russian oligarch. I mean, this is outrageous.
It's a very clear example of peddling intel.
Totally.
Yeah.
Exactly. And no one's covering it except us? I mean, how outrageous. Benjamin, great to see you. Thanks very much for weighing in on all of that.